First question. What happens when a police officer thinks he's in control, unaware that the woman he just handcuffed is one of the most powerful figures in the U.S. military? Hot winds swept across the dusty back roads of Georgia, stirring up a haze of red clay that clung to the air like memories of old battlefields. A matte gray Jeep Wrangler idled quietly by the roadside. Inside sat General Monica Blake, her eyes fixed on the military-grade GPS flickering with a weak signal. She wasn't lost, only momentarily disoriented. The terrain near Fort Blake had changed after months of heavy construction. Even someone who had led international military operations could be misled by a missing road sign. And then, red and blue lights flashed in her rearview mirror. A piercing police siren screamed through the still air. Monica closed her eyes for one brief moment. Not out of fear. Not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she was too familiar with this moment. The moment every person of color knows, when you must prepare not to die. She rolled down the window, placed both hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel. Just like generations of black mothers had taught their children. Don't react. Don't flinch. Don't make a mistake. A young police officer approached. Tall, muscular, shoulders tight with anticipation. His right hand hovered near his holster, eyes sharp with suspicion. "What are you doing here?" "License and registration," he demanded. "I was adjusting my GPS. I'm en route to Fort Blake. Here are my documents," Monica replied, calm as if she were handling a high-level briefing at the Pentagon. Madsen didn't even glance at the paperwork. All he saw was a black woman in an expensive vehicle, parked somewhere that didn't fit his mental model of belonging. He took a step back, motioning. "Step out of the vehicle," Monica frowned. "Am I being detained?" "Out, now." Across the road, a Toyota Corolla slowed. A man pulled out his phone and began filming. A voice called out from the car. "She didn't do anything. Why are you pulling her out of the car?" Monica took a deep breath. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stepped out of the Jeep with the composure of someone who had walked through mortar fire without flinching. "Are you armed?" Madsen asked, scanning her body as if she might be hiding a pistol in her boots. "No, I'm military. My weapon is secured at the base," she answered. Madsen scoffed. "Oh, so now you're military? What are you, a mechanic?" Monica didn't respond. She stood tall, silent, her gaze unshaken. Madsen circled the vehicle, flashlight in hand. "These windows are too tinted. That's illegal. They're legal for military-registered vehicles. I have documentation inside." "Don't lecture me on the law," he snapped, tone thick with irritation and disdain. "You're disobeying a police order. Hands behind your back." And in that brief moment, General Monica Blake, the same woman who had met with the Secretary of Defense, who had commanded thousands of troops in the Middle East, was handcuffed like a common criminal. Her only crime, her skin color and her self-assurance. A shout from across the road, "She's a general. What the hell are you doing?" Madsen didn't hear it. Or worse, he chose to ignore it. He shoved Monica against the hot hood of the Jeep, face down. Phone cameras zoomed in on her face, composed, cold, unshaken. She didn't resist. She knew this game. She had seen it play out across the globe. And she knew, when the moment came, one phone call would shift the entire board. This wasn't a routine stop. This was the opening move in a confrontation between prejudice and truth. Monica wasn't a helpless victim. She was the calm inside the storm. She didn't need to shout. True power never has to announce itself. It speaks when it must. The wind whistled through the trees like a silent warning. Lieutenant General Monica Blake stood upright in her steel-gray military SUV, hands on the wheel. In her rearview mirror, she watched the approaching officer, rigid stride, hand brushing his holster. He had no idea who he was walking up to. Not just a black woman in the Deep South, but a 3-star general in the United States Armed Forces, once in charge of entire theaters of war. "Step out, now," he barked, voice sharp as a blade. Monica exhaled, not from fear, but because she knew everything had just changed. She removed her seatbelt, opened the door, and stepped out with movements so precise they seemed rehearsed. Officer Kyle Madsen eyed her head to toe, eyes narrowed. She wore plain clothes, no medals, no ribbons. She was on leave, visiting her mother in Huntsville after heart surgery. Her SUV, a government vehicle, bore no military markings. A perfect trap for bias. "License and ID," he snapped. Monica calmly reached into the glove box, pulled out her military ID, driver's license, and vehicle registration, and handed them to him without a word. The wind picked up. Cars slowed to stare. A young man across the street started filming. The air thickened as if the entire universe had paused to watch. "General, Monica Blake?" Madsen mumbled, staring at the ID. "This thing real?" "You're holding the real thing," Monica replied, gaze steady. Madsen scoffed. "These are easy to fake. Anyone can print something that looks official." Monica raised an eyebrow. She could have pulled out her phone and called base command, had a code verified in seconds. But she didn't. She wanted to see how far he'd go. When would his arrogance collapse? "I pulled over to adjust my GPS," she said evenly. "I wasn't speeding, didn't run a light, didn't obstruct traffic. I'd like to know what crime I'm being arrested for." Madsen scowled. "You resisting a police order?" And with that one sentence, the mask dropped. He had no intention of verifying anything. He wanted to assert dominance, because to him, that mattered more than any rank or badge a black woman could ever carry. "Turn around. Hands behind your head. You're under arrest for failure to comply." The order was barked like she was a fugitive. Monica didn't resist. But when she looked into the camera from across the street, her calm, fearless eyes told the whole story. Madsen slammed the cuffs tight enough that bruises appeared in seconds. He shoved her toward the squad car, shoulder pressed, hips slammed into the doorframe. It was rough, it was intentional. Monica didn't cry out, didn't resist. She only looked up at the sky. Gray clouds loomed overhead like the ghosts of history rising once again. She knew this was no longer just about her. She stood for the thousands who had been doubted, detained, and humiliated, simply because of the color of their skin. But he didn't know, she was memorizing everything, every word, every glance, every click of the handcuffs, because when the time was right, she wouldn't need to raise her voice. Just one phone call, one name, and the entire system would shake. The patrol car pulled away from the roadside, merging into traffic as drivers watched in silent hesitation. No one dared to interfere, but at least someone had filmed it. A video was now uploading with the title, "Black Woman Handcuffed on Highway for No Reason." None of them knew that the woman was General Monica Blake, a military leader once entrusted by the Pentagon to lead the Kandahar hostage rescue mission. A woman who had once sat across from the president in the Oval Office. Now she was being slammed against the hood of her own military vehicle by a man who hadn't even bothered to read her name on the ID. And that would be the last mistake he was ever allowed to make. At the Jefferson County Police Department in Alabama, typically a hub for petty arrests like DUIs and minor traffic offenses, a silent storm was approaching. No sirens, no warnings, completely beyond their control. General Monica Blake was led through the back entrance, still cuffed, her shirt wrinkled from being pinned to the hood, her hair falling loosely over one cheek. But her back was straight, her eyes defiant. She didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't plead. She sat quietly in the waiting area, eyes fixed on the wall clock, 10:43 a.m. She knew the exact time because every second was encoded in her mind, trained like a strategist, like a commander. And now the operation had begun. Officer Kyle Madsen paced nearby, trying to project calm, but his hands were trembling slightly. Something about her silence unnerved him. No fear, no fragility, only focus. It was like standing near a real officer. "Don't think you can call anyone," he barked, pointing toward the ancient landline phone at the far end of the room. "All calls are recorded. You're being detained for identity fraud." Monica didn't respond. She simply watched him for a long moment, as if measuring how much longer he could stand before his world collapsed. After fingerprinting and intake photos, she was granted her one call. Monica walked to the phone, wrists sore from the cuffs, and dialed the familiar sequence, slowly, precisely like entering a classified code. "Pentagon Operations Center," a female voice answered. "This is Blake. Code 19A Echo Bravo 2. Initiate Protocol Obsidian. Priority Level 1. Silence. Confirmed, General Blake. Connecting to Rapid Response Command. Please hold." A desk sergeant, who had been watching TikToks with his headphones on, suddenly turned around, eyes wide. Madsen, across the room, squinted. Did she just say General? No. Had to be fake. She's just putting on an act. Right? Monica held the line for 11 seconds, then hung up. No explanation. And that was the moment the ground began to shake. 10:57 a.m., Military Special Response Command Center, Arlington, Virginia. The Level 1 alert siren blared, a rare signal reserved only for civilian threats against general officers. Colonel Teresa Maddox pulled her phone from her uniform, eyes scanning the encrypted message. Blake, Alabama, unlawful detention, initiate, protocol Obsidian. She didn't ask why, she knew Monica, and she knew that if Monica made that call, this was no routine incident. Get emergency comms online. Contact DOJ and Homeland Security. I want GPS coordinates on her vehicle in 3 minutes. And get Captain Herrera at Mitchell Base, he's the closest asset we have. Everything moved like gears in a perfectly tuned machine. Layers of power were activating. But in Jefferson, Alabama, they had no idea what was coming. 12 a.m., Jefferson County Police Department in Pearl is Tet. A sleek black SUV tore into the parking lot like a shadow. Captain Miguel Herrera stepped out, immaculate uniform, name tag gleaming, a folder tucked under his arm. He walked into the station, handed his military ID to the front desk. I need immediate access to the woman you arrested this morning, Monica Blake. She's a United States Army general. Under Federal Protocol 243A, I am invoking right of access. The receptionist blinked. Did he just say general? Within minutes, 3 junior officers were called in to verify credentials. Confusion spread like wildfire. Madsen was summoned to a small conference room. He entered, eyes darting around nervously, where Herrera stood beside a legal officer from the Judge Advocate General's Corps. You arrested a woman without verifying her military ID? Herrera asked, calm but cold. She didn't have insignia on her car, she wasn't in uniform, and she looked suspicious. She is General Blake. She led the Kandahar hostage rescue. Do you even know who she is? Madsen said nothing. His throat dried out. Sweat gathered on the back of his neck. You know what? Herrera leaned in. It would have been bad enough if she were a civilian, but you just humiliated a national symbol, and every single thing you did was caught on camera. Madsen stumbled out of the room, and in his mind only one sentence echoed like a death knell. I'm done for. 11:25 a.m., holding cell. The door opened. General Blake, a woman's voice called. We apologize. You are to be released immediately, and the Secretary of Defense would like to speak with you privately via video call. Monica stood, retrieved her jacket from the back of the chair. She didn't smile, she didn't gloat, she simply looked the officer in the eye. This isn't the first time, but I'll do everything in my power to make it the last. And as she walked out of the precinct, the crowd had already begun to gather. Phones were live streaming, signs were raised high. She's a general, not a suspect. The world was watching. 12:15 p.m., Jefferson, Alabama. The midday sun scorched the sidewalks, but outside the police station, dozens had gathered. They weren't there out of curiosity. They were there because of a 42-second video, spreading across social media like wildfire. In the clip, Officer Madsen barked at a black woman standing tall, not resisting. I don't care who you are. Put your hands behind your back. Click. The cuffs snapped closed. At second 34, a female voice off-camera shouted, Someone contact Fort Mitchell. Lieutenant General Monica Blake is being unlawfully detained. Within 30 minutes of its upload, the hashtag General Blake was trending in the top 3 nationwide. Washington, D.C., 12:30 p.m. CNN headquarters, a rapid response meeting was underway in the newsroom. This is massive. A 3-star general arrested because of the color of her skin and treated like a criminal on the very soil she defended. Do we have confirmation? Yes, the Pentagon issued a statement. General Monica Blake is cooperating with the Department of Defense regarding the incident. Every major network, NBC, ABC, MSNBC, Fox, broke the story. And soon, people were diving into Blake's background. 32 years of service. Over 8,000 troops under her command. The first black woman to lead a peacekeeping mission in East Africa. A woman with national insignia on her chest slammed against a vehicle by the side of the road. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, clips analyzing Madsen's every word and move flooded feeds. A popular TikToker said, I can't believe this. A woman with 3 stars on her shoulder was cuffed because she looked suspicious? Then who among us is safe? A white veteran posted a heartfelt video. I served beside women like Monica. If someone like her can be treated this way, then this whole system needs rebuilding. 1 p.m. Jefferson Police Department media descended like a tidal wave. Cameras, microphones, reporters flooded the entrance. Police Chief Ray Hammond stood tensely at a makeshift podium. "We are conducting an internal investigation and will fully cooperate with federal authorities to clarify the incident. We apologize to Lieutenant General Monica Blake and the community for what occurred." No one bought the apology. And more importantly, Monica had yet to make a public appearance. Meanwhile, in a closed meeting room at Fort Mitchell, Monica sat before 3 senior Pentagon officials. On the table was a drafted press release. "If you speak out now, the media will erupt," one said. "But we need to control the narrative. You could issue a thank you message, urge calm." Monica said nothing. She looked out the window where southern blue skies were now blanketed by an approaching storm. "I don't need calm," she said. "I need the truth. And I won't let anyone else speak for me." She stood and picked up her phone. The screen read, "You've been tagged in 7,432 posts." She opened one clip, a teenage girl filming herself. "I don't know who General Blake is, but if someone like her can get cuffed the way my mom once was, this system is broken." That girl was the reason Monica knew she couldn't stay silent. 2 p.m. Monica posts her first public message. "I am Lieutenant General Monica Blake. I've stood in combat zones to defend American lives in the world's most dangerous places. Today I was handcuffed on U.S. soil because of my skin color. I'm not sharing this out of anger. I'm sharing it because we must do better. Not just for me, but for every person without a rank, without a camera. We must begin to change, and I will not stand down." The post passed 3 million shares in 2 hours. A new hashtag exploded, "Stand with Blake." That night, at a school in Atlanta, a group of high school students printed slogans and plastered them around the halls. "Skin color is not a weapon. General Blake taught us to stand tall." A history teacher played her speech for the class. Some students teared up because they saw themselves in her. In the doubt, the dismissal, the pain. Part 4 didn't just show the power of media, it revealed a deeper truth. No matter your status, talent, or honor, bias can still shackle you with just a glance. But that same media, when wielded wisely, can flip the narrative. 8:30 a.m., 3 days after the incident, Jefferson PD internal hearing room. The room wasn't large, but it had become the nation's focal point. Cameras were positioned in every corner. Reporters crowded the lobby. Live broadcasts streamed nationwide. On the screen, internal hearing, Lieutenant General Monica Blake, incident April 5. Inside, the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. At one end of the table, Monica Blake, in full dress uniform, 3 stars on her shoulder. At the other, Officer Brent Madsen, in wrinkled gray civvies, unkempt hair, dark circles under his eyes. Between them sat Colonel Haskins, overseeing the hearing. Monica didn't blink. This was no longer private. It was war, without bullets. Haskins opened. "General Blake, we deeply regret what you experienced. Today, we invite you to recount the incident in your own words." Monica nodded, rose from her seat. She didn't carry notes. She didn't look at anyone except Madsen. "I'm not here to speak for the law," she said. "I'm here to speak for those who never get this microphone. The ones pulled from their cars because they don't look right. The ones branded as threats just for driving home." She stepped closer to the table. "I've worn the American flag on my shoulder and crossed enemy lines to protect the values of this country. But that day, when Officer Madsen pressed my face to a hot hood and cuffed my wrists without a single question, I was no longer a general. I was no longer a soldier. I was just a black woman under suspicion." The room was dead silent. Madsen stared at the floor. He was asked to respond. He stood, awkward, voice trembling. I didn't know who she was. I thought I was following protocol. I saw a car parked illegally and I got suspicious." "What did you see?" Monica interrupted. Her voice was calm, but sharp. I saw someone who wasn't cooperating, and the windows were tinted." "What did you see?" Monica stepped forward, now only half a meter away. "I saw a black woman in a dark SUV," Madsen stammered. "You saw your own bias," Monica said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it pierced like a blade of ice. "You didn't see me. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't see the 3 stars on my shoulder. You only saw one thing, my skin." At that moment, the screen behind them unexpectedly flickered to life, playing dashcam footage. The image of Monica being handcuffed was crystal clear. Everyone in the room saw the moment she was slammed onto the hood of the vehicle, sunlight gleaming off the stars on her shoulder. And still, Madsen ignored it. Her voice echoed from the clip. "I am Lieutenant General Monica Blake. I request identity verification." And then the clack of handcuffs. There were no more excuses. As the hearing concluded, Haskins addressed the room. "We will refer the entire case to the Federal Commission on Racial Bias in Law Enforcement. While under review, Officer Brent Madsen is suspended without pay." The room rose to their feet. Monica quietly walked out. Reporters surged forward, microphones held up like a forest. But she said nothing. She looked straight into the lens of a young black reporter, eyes glistening with emotion. She nodded. Monica had confronted the man who humiliated her, not with retaliation but with truth and honor, forcing him to face the darkness inside himself. This was the pivotal shift, from victim to catalyst. She didn't destroy Madsen, she made him see himself. 9 a.m. the next morning, in a top floor of an unmarked building in downtown D.C., a group of national security advisors convened an emergency session. On the screen, footage of Monica Blake in handcuffs, as aired on CNN the night before. Alongside it, millions of views, viral hashtags, "She served but was shamed," "Justice for Monica, systemic bias exposed." The FBI director, the Joint Chiefs chairman, the White House communications director, and top senators watched the footage over and over. No one spoke. No one smiled. No one pretended it would go away. "Ladies and gentlemen," a senior advisor began, "the woman in that video is Lieutenant General Monica Blake. She's head of the Eastern Strategic Defense Command. She negotiated at Geneva. She was awarded the Silver Star for saving a unit ambushed in Kandahar, and she was treated like a criminal on a Georgia highway." Silence. Then Senator Carol Leland, Republican from Ohio, spoke. "I don't care who she is. I care what the public sees. That even a black woman with stars on her shoulder can still be humiliated, if the system allows it." Beside her, Senator Jamal Price, Democrat, nodded. "This isn't about one person anymore. We're staring down the collapse of trust from millions of Americans who wonder daily, does my dignity protect me if my skin isn't the right color?" At the White House, a presidential advisor rushed into the Oval Office. "You need to see this." The president, a veteran of Desert Storm, stared at the footage. Then came Monica's calm voice. "I am Lieutenant General Monica Blake. I request identity verification." And instead of verification, came handcuffs. He placed a fist on the desk, knuckles white. "She deserves an apology," he said. "But more than that, America owes her a promise." 2 p.m., Monica is invited to the Pentagon, but not as a commander. This time, as a voice for a generation of soldiers and citizens who've been silenced. She entered the high-level meeting room. The Secretary of Defense, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, and senior military leaders were seated. A chair at the center, reserved for her. The Secretary of Defense was first to speak. "General Blake, first and foremost, we apologize for what happened. But we didn't call you here to ask for forgiveness. We called to ask for something more. Your help in reforming the system." Monica raised an eyebrow. "Reform what?" "The entire framework of military law enforcement interaction. We propose establishing the Blake Protocol, an interagency standard for ID verification, anti-abuse safeguards, and mandatory racial bias training for federally funded units." She looked around the room, people with authority to launch nuclear missiles now awaiting her nod. Monica didn't rush. "I'll agree, on one condition." "What is it?" asked the chairman. She leaned forward, gaze sharp as a scalpel. "Don't just make the Blake Protocol a checklist. Make it a reminder that even those in uniform with stars on their shoulders are not immune to bias. And America should remember that every time an officer salutes the flag." That evening, the president addressed the nation. No orchestra, no fireworks, just an aging soldier standing before a camera, voice steady. "Tonight, I want to thank Lieutenant General Monica Blake. She is not just a soldier, she is a standard. Thanks to her, America has awoken from a long slumber. We will not repeat our mistakes. We will change." This was the system's turning point. Monica Blake was no longer a victim or resistor. She was the architect of national reform. Her voice echoed in the highest rooms of power, forcing a nation to examine itself. Roosevelt High School, Southeast D.C., a place few military convoys ever visit. Fewer still see generals. But that afternoon, under flickering fluorescent lights and basketball echoes from the windows, Monica Blake walked into a classroom. No red carpet, no banners. Just Miss Carmichael, the history teacher, tapping her desk to keep order among 30 high school students. Curious, distracted, skeptical, awestruck, Miss Carmichael smiled. "Class, this is Lieutenant General Monica Blake. She's not here to lecture, she's here to listen and to tell the truth." Monica stepped to the front. Her uniform was replaced by a simple white shirt and black slacks. No medals, none needed. "Good afternoon," she said. "Before I say anything, who has a question?" A boy in the back, hoodie pulled up, raised his hand. "You really a general? Like, you command soldiers? Planes? Battleships?" She smiled and nodded. Another student chimed in, tone slightly defiant. "Then why didn't you yell that day? Push back? Tell that cop who he was messing with." Silence fell. All eyes on Monica. She nodded, unshaken. "Because yelling only makes people listen less. If I had fought back, I'd become exactly what they already decided I was. Not because I'm weak, but because sometimes standing silent is stronger than throwing a punch." A girl in the front row, braided hair and sharp eyes, asked, "But you're a general. Just saying your rank should have stopped them, right?" Monica nodded. "My rank gave me authority, but my skin still gave them doubt. And that, kids, says more than any title I'll ever earn." A long pause. Then a boy raised his hand, small and shy. "Were you scared?" She looked directly at him. "I've walked into minefields in Syria, not knowing if I'd come out alive. But facing a police officer, being cuffed on a highway in the country I serve, that's a different fear. Not from guns, but from injustice so quiet, you don't see it until it's crushing your chest." The room went still. A bespectacled student, even quieter, asked, "Do you think it'll change anything, or will people forget?" Monica stepped down from the podium, walked into the center of the room. "This story is just a spark, but if you keep it in your hearts, if you speak up, ask questions, vote, write songs, paint murals, protest, study law, then that spark becomes a wildfire for change." She looked around. "And you are the ones holding the matches." Miss Carmichael stood silently at the back, hands clasped, eyes red. The students stood. No command given, no orders shouted. They rose because they understood. Some people don't need to shout to make the whole world listen. The legacy of Monica Blake wasn't just that of a general or someone who reclaimed her dignity. It was as the one who ignited awareness in the next generation. The image of Monica in cuffs, calm face, proud pain, transcended a viral clip. It appeared on screens nationwide, from living room TVs in Indiana to student phones at Howard University to giant displays in San Francisco's Union Square. But what made people pause, stop scrolling, go silent, was the moment Monica spoke her name. Not trembling, not furious, just clear. Firm. "I am Lieutenant General Monica Blake, United States Army." And for a moment, America stood still. At Congress, a bill named the Blake Protocol was fast-tracked. A national framework, handling interactions with military personnel, identity verification protocols, and most crucially, mandatory racial bias training for all law enforcement receiving federal funding. A Georgia senator said during the hearing, "We didn't just handcuff a general, we handcuffed the people's trust in justice." In cities nationwide, protests rose, not in chaos, but with coordination. Lawyers led, veterans spoke. Students held banners reading, "Respect has a rank, and so does justice." People carried Monica's image, not of her in handcuffs, but the photo of her at the podium, spine straight, gaze locked into the lens, saying, "I don't demand justice, I expect it." Inside the Pentagon's war room, Lieutenant General Monica Blake sat across from the Secretary of Defense. His hand rested on a folder stamped with multiple security seals, a formal nomination for Commander of the U.S. Army, a position never before held by a black woman in American history. He spoke plainly. "We need you back, Monica. The military needs leaders like you." Monica remained silent. Her eyes drifted toward the mounted television, where CNN was airing a live congressional hearing on the Blake Protocol. There, her name was no longer followed by a rank. It was followed by a principle. Civic responsibility. She turned back, calm but firm. "You know, I used to think the biggest battle of my life was in Kandahar. Turns out, it started on a highway in America, and I'm not done fighting it." That evening, Monica returned to her small apartment in Arlington. Her younger brother, Elijah, was already there, with Chinese takeout, a couple of beers, and the congressional hearing queued up on his laptop. He handed her a handwritten note. If you're not wearing the uniform anymore, then what are you wearing? She chuckled, but her eyes revealed a deeper answer. I'll wear the truth, and the truth doesn't need a uniform. Capitol Hill in the fall, a quiet majesty laced with tension. Hundreds of journalists, staffers, delegates, and eyes from across the world watched as the national hearing on the Blake Protocol began. The doors opened. Monica Blake stepped in. No uniform, no medals, just a sleek black suit, a high bun, and a presence that made the entire chamber hold its breath. Cameras zoomed in on every gesture. Live streams went global. The room was silent as Monica approached the microphone. She lifted her chin and began. My name is Monica Blake. I was a lieutenant general in the United States Army, and 3 weeks ago I was handcuffed on an American highway because of the color of my skin and the suspicion of a man who should have known the difference between authority and bias. She paused. Not a breath in the room. I wasn't the first, and if you don't act, I won't be the last. Monica's gaze swept the room, cutting straight to the conscience of every soul in front of her. This isn't about rank. This isn't about honoring me. It's about a society protected by people like me, still unable to protect the people who believe in it. Outside, a group of DC high school students held up hand-painted signs. She served the country. Now the country must serve justice. Inside, Monica closed her testimony, not with tears, not with anger, but with a single line that left America reeling. I once stood on a battlefield to defend freedom. Today I stand on the line between silence and justice, and I choose not to be silent. The applause that followed wasn't out of courtesy. It was the sound of recognition, of change. Weeks later, the executive order was signed. The Blake Protocol became federal standard. Every law enforcement officer in a federally funded system would now be required to undergo training on racial bias, engagement with military personnel, and power transparency. At every checkpoint, a new sign was installed. Respect has a rank, but dignity is universal. Coming home. Monica stepped into her modest Virginia home. She slipped off her shoes, dropped her keys into a clay bowl their father once made. No cameras, no questions, just birdsong and the smell of Elijah's cinnamon rolls baking in the kitchen. You're back? Elijah called out. She nodded. Finally. Home. He pointed to a note on the table, written in careful handwriting by a 6th-grade student. Dear Miss Monica, thank you for not being afraid. Because of you, I'm going to try to be someone who stands up. Monica smiled. Her eyes drifted to the window, where the sky was not fading to sunset, but breaking into dawn. This story didn't end with a dramatic battle. It ended with a quiet reckoning, the kind that only comes after walking through pain, prejudice, and the crushing weight of systemic injustice. Monica Blake didn't just reclaim her honor. She opened a path for a new generation. Young people looking at her and realizing, sometimes the strongest resistance is simply standing tall. You've just witnessed the breathtaking true story of Lieutenant General Monica Blake, a woman who dedicated her life to protecting this nation and yet was still handcuffed on an American highway, simply for being black. She didn't scream, she didn't fight back. She stood still and made an entire system look itself in the mirror. Sometimes you don't have to shout to change the world. You just have to stand still at the right moment. If this story moved you, leave us a comment below. What moment hit you the hardest? What do you think society must do to stop these stories from repeating? And if it had been you on that highway, what would you have done? Let's build a space where truth is heard and justice is no longer delayed. Share this video with someone who needs to see that resistance doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply refuses to sit down. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell, because tomorrow, Aiva Stories brings you another journey that might just change the way you see the world. Aiva Stories, where stories aren't just told, they're lived.